traders, a big warm welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Adam Harris and I'm going to be having a look at the markets. I'm going to start off just quickly with the economic calendar for this coming week. And the one I'm really going to be paying the most attention to will be kind of around about Friday. This is just with regards to non-farm payrolls, unemployment, effectively jobs coming out of the US, which is usually quite a turbulent, or at least historically has been a turbulent event. However, there's bigger concerns right now with regards to the US potentially. I should be specific here, the Republican Party specifically allowing in the US to default on its debts that were created under the Republican terms. So we will see about that. I think it's unlikely. However, it is definitely a concern, and I think therefore that's really where all eyes are going to be on that. So other than that, all of these have that potential to create some disruption in the markets throughout the for intraday traders at the very least. And I think, but aside from that, I think this week is not really going to be obsessing about these as much as it is going to be about those other things. And I would just be exercising caution if I'm trading below the 4-hour time frame in the run-up to these major events. Moving on to the charts and having a look at the VIX Volatility Index. And so we did push up again, which was unexpected and quite nice. We kind of failed to push above 25, but for a while it was looking pretty good. We were actually continuing to push up and then finally ultimately closed down sort of halfway back down. Now, one of the things I do want to highlight here is that on the weekly chart, it has started to produce higher lows and higher highs, or at least disregarding this one for the moment. It's slowly but surely starting to push a little bit higher, and one can only hope that this is actually that this is the beginning of a trend, and we find ourselves sort of between now and Christmas starting to creep a little bit high and averaging around this area. If we do that, there should be an increase in sustained moves in the markets, which should be make a lot of traders very happy. All right, moving on to the dollar index, having a look at that. So beautifully this week, we did continue to push out. We broke through this level of resistance, which I've removed. We're now pushing on towards 95. We're hovering around the 94 level. What I would like to see is price to pull back into this area, the previous market structures here, produce a bullish candle this week, and then attempt to continue to move to the upside. This is not a particularly bullish weekly candle, so I do expect the market to fall back a little bit down this week and to test these old highs here. And then ideally, let's see if it's got the strength to resume, and also noting just some old prior highs where it is now. So I'm not really expecting the strength at this point in time. We produced a swing high, and so I'm looking to see if we do end up coming back down to that. Looking at the euro dollar, one of the good things out of this is that we did break out of this range. So we had some good moves, especially kind of on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We had a bit of moves there, a bit of a correction happening now. And so again, I would like to see the euro dollar kind of head back up into these areas, these previous market structures here, test it, ideally find some resistance there, and then continue and work its way back down to 1.16. So here it is still, I define it as still within a range there. So I would like to see if we can head back up and head back down if that's going to be the case. We may not even go that far. We might simply just come up to about 1.660 and then resume head and then go back down. So somewhere back into about the midpoint of this previous week's candle. Looking at sterling, so one of the things, again, this is coming back up into these lows. Now, you know, historically, this is the way that most traders would have done it. They would have waited for it to come back to test support as resistance and traded it down. But these days, you know, the market just seems to just smash to these and come all the way back up here, and it just will not commit to any of these trends. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing here. I'm just not necessarily something that isn't going to happen here. I just note, of course, prices come down, tested this level of resistance as support. I do think a bounce off here makes a lot of sense. Most of this looks relatively bearish, and so, excuse me, at this point in time, I am expecting the price to continue to head down. So therefore, this week I'll be looking for a nice bearish rejection candle in this area, and to see if we fail. You know, of course, if price just comes straight up here, breaks the highs, then that refutes that kind of thing. Now, generally speaking, more often than not, this is what should happen. It should find some resistance in this area, continue down. But with currencies lately, they just kind of set up for something and then they just break through it. So this is why I approach this with some caution, but this is certainly something I'm looking for, and that's in line with that stronger US dollar. So now with the Aussie dollar, US dollar, we did have a bit of a breakdown of this last one, that we've recovered back up. Overall, the Australian dollar and the US dollar, especially Aussie dollar, US dollar, is not really clear on where it wants to go. It's kind of hovering in this area. If you look at the monthly candles here, it's also, excuse me, producing these indecision candles. So this is my least favorite of the bunch. And also it's looking like it wants to test, it wants to push a little bit higher as well. Kiwi dollar, US dollar, same thing again. Strong reaction off that, as though it's just touched the hot surface, just reacted off that. A little bit of a small bullish inside candle there so far, and quite a rejection of this. Overall, it is still within a range. I'm quite happy to actually just move this range that we did have over here and just kind of bring it in here. So there's no doubt, to me at any rate, that we are still stuck within a range. We've had a couple of failed breakouts. Overall, this is not really the kind of most ideal in terms of fishing opportunities. This is just still back within that range. Again, same as Aussie dollar, US dollar, least of my favorites. Now, one of the things I was kind of happy to see here is to see dollar yen, which I just generally will label this as junk until further notice. Had this nice little consolidation period, ranging period, broke out of it, attempted to get up to 111 and then fell back down. This is actually a little bit more bullish than one might expect. I do think it's going to attempt to climb a little bit higher, but just highlighting here that as far as I'm concerned, this is still within range, and therefore we're not in the woods just yet. Potentially a move back down, and if the dollar does strengthen, we might see a climb. Again, not a fan of these. So far, euro, dollar, GBP, dollar, my favorites. Let's have a look at dollar Swissy. This one's still looking more bullish than bearish. Again, a very similar shaped candle here that we see on dollar yen, almost identical weekly shaped candle here. Looking for a bullish candle Monday, Tuesday, and looking for this to continue to climb higher. So far, a little bit of divergence on RSI, but MACD seems fine. I'm not gonna obsess about it. We do have high lows, high highs on the monthly, and I do have this level at 94. So that is really what I would like to see happen. See that push on there. Liking the look of that. Dollar CAD, look at this. No real clear trend here. Actually, it looks as though it's kind of setting up for a lower high, potential break of this, and a move back down to 1.25. The weekly looking a bit like a mess, and also showing that possibility of a weaker dollar on this side, or at least a stronger CAD, so weaker dollar CAD. And again, just looking at the price section here on the monthly, look at that attempt and a fail and an attempt and a fail, and then sort of a bit of a indecision candle here, and now a bit of a bearish monthly candle. So all of this just hinting at the possibility of this heading lower. Certainly not looking like it's getting ready for breakout at this point in time. Might come back down and test this level 1.25. All right, now, so what I want to do is just, these are roughly the same ones these are exactly the same charts that I had last week. I want to quickly work my way through them because I haven't seen anything in terms of currencies that looks really that great. Euro yen here stuck within this range, had a big move up and then knocked all the way back down. Looking at this, you could just see here, nice little bullish candle the previous week, and last week much more of a bearish candle, almost closing near the lows. Monthly, we're stuck within kind of, it's an inside candle at this point anyway, in the previous month, sort of in that same range. So there's just not a lot here until this breaks above this. I'm then bullish. If it breaks below this, I'm bearish. Pretty straightforward. Let's have a look at sterling yen. Same thing again. It's also stuck within a range. The difference is this is definitely weaker, and so we can see the series of lower highs coming in strong. A lot of buyers below this 149 level, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this produce a lower high and head down. So one of the things I have been looking at that is on my watch list, but this is something that could take a couple of weeks to unfold, is a flat level breakout of this area. So looking for lower highs, almost like a ball bouncing, that's losing its momentum and ultimately breaking through that and heading on down. And of course, there's a significant level right below that. So there's not a lot about this that looks really fantastic, but that is one of the things I'm looking for. Should price break up and break above these highs, that will invalidate that idea immediately. CAD yen did actually come up, really nice bullish candle that we had the week prior to that. We have actually now produced a high, low, high, high, but it is still arguably still within that range. That's a relatively bullish inside candle that we have over here. And so this leans towards the idea of it heading and pushing to the upside there. So we might have a weaker CAD and therefore a stronger yen against that, and therefore we push a little bit higher, bigger partner, stronger CAD, weaker yen. So again, it's come back down, produced this, but look at the rejections and failures. Again, what I'd like to see is a break above that, then I start to become more bullish. Otherwise, it's still stuck within this range. Okay, just looks a little bit more bullish than some of the other candles. All right, other charts that we just had a look at. Swissy yen. Okay, so this was a nice bullish outside candle, bullish engulfing candle, but then we've gone nowhere. And I have marked this area as a band of resistance. You can see we have pulled back up. We've kind of, this is not an especially bullish candle. We almost have started potentially coming back down to this level. So this is showing not as, although that was a particularly bullish recovery, this is not showing a lot of strength in terms of follow through, and this is a concern for me. So again, I'm going to avoid kind of seeing anything here until I see price break above these levels. Then I start to look bullish above this zone. Otherwise, potentially continuation to the downside, but not that attractive. All right, so EURJPY, we had some good trading opportunities with breaks below these levels of support, moves to the downside to these levels of support. This following right through, looking really nice and bearish. That's a really nice bearish candle, almost closing near the lows. If we break through this level of support, then I might find some good opportunities in this area to then trade it to the downside. The next significant level for me being down at 1.44. So again, breaks and retests, or just breaks and excuse me, breaks and retests, only breaks and continuations down to this level. So that's, I quite like the look of GBPCAD as well. Really nice breakdown to the downside. We've got some nice solid bearish candles here, nice full bellied red sellers candle there. I want to see if we can break the low of that, a continuation, and then start to head on down to 1.67. So there might be some pullbacks on opportunities, on kind of retracements, whether we get some sort of micro uptrends or sort of micro trends to the upside, but they being forming shorting opportunities that are set up there. So some kind of bear flags. Similar thing here. Look at these failures and rejections of the price action. You're just unable to get back up there. It's just a bit of a retracement there. Again, I'm looking at this bearish candle here. The problem is we've just got this major level right here, but there might be some shorting opportunities to the downside there as well. And then Aussie CAD. Now, this is Aussie Kiwi is looking quite interesting to me. We'd had a really nice breakout to this level, back up to this level. This is something I spoke about last week. Now, looking at this very bullish candle closing almost near the high. Yes, there's a significant level where we are. We have broken above the high of that, and we are, I think it's fair to say, stuck within a bigger picture, a larger range, longer term range. So this is something that I would like to see. I think if we can break above this level and hold, then I think there's a really good chance of it continuing back up to the top of this range, so 1.09. And so this is what I'll be looking for this week, see if we can get back over that 1.05, potentially come back, but this would actually be over the next couple of weeks. Alternatively, pull back down and some kind of a break up above that level being a breakout opportunity to trade it to the upside. If, on the other hand, next week, this time next week, a week from now, we have a bearish rejection set up here, a nice little bearish rejection weekly candle, then there might be an opportunity to trade it back down to the bottom. But this in particular, taken in context of the entire kind of going back to 2018, looking at that, looks as though it certainly wants to work its way back up to the top of that range. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's move on to, so those are the currencies of interest. Let's move on to commodities, special metals, and have a look at gold. So gold, nice little bullish, very subtle bullish candle that's formed off the 1750 level. We've had a bit of a rejection down here. A lot of this supporting the idea that there are a few buyers down here, not enough to really get it over that line. And again, I spoke last week about it potentially breaking down. It's come back down into these old lows and recovered back up from that. So it still supports the idea at this point in time there are buyers at this level. Now, one of the things I'm going to be looking for is a break above this level to see if I start to get more and more bullish. Right, so there's a really, that's a nice strong recovery followed with a nice little bullish candle followed through on that. I want to see it continue this week to break up above that and especially break these highs. If we can get back up above 1800, then we start to look more and more bullish. At this point in time, there's just not enough information. It's looking as though buyers have come back in. They do want to push it back up to these highs over here. So I'm just going to mark that. This will be the range. Oopsie. Let's do that. Just this will be the range there. Get us back out to the top of that, and let's see if that happens. On the other hand, should it just fail exactly where it is in this area and then continue down, it'll come back down to this level. I might be looking for shorting opportunities back below that 1750 level. But make no mistake, it is messy and therefore higher risk. Okay, so silver had a bit of a push up. I quite like that. Back over the line, back above the $22 mark. This is particularly nice and bullish. I quite like that. So it is certainly trying to do that, but the trend hasn't given us any signs of changing. It is now at the bottom of this monthly range as well. So there's a range here on the monthly. And yes, I'd like to see it break up above this $23 mark if we're going to do that this week. But there is no guarantee it's going to do it. It could fail exactly where it is, similar to gold, and start to slip back down. So I'm prepared for either outcome there. There are times the market is expressing much more clearly what its intentions are. These are showing, look, they're showing that they're trying to go higher, but they may then fail. So moving on to crude oils. Crude oils, quite liking the look of this. So far, we've got some really nice bullish candles. That price action so far for the week looking pretty good, relatively sustainable. I'd like to see it close above these highs here. I'd like to see that continue, especially this coming week. See if we can push on a little bit higher and close above that. For me, that then feeds into the idea of a continuation onwards and upwards towards 85. We have pulled back. We have got a nice bullish candle on Friday. I need to see us get past this cluster. Price struggling a little bit in this area. That's a decent close. I would have preferred for it to close up above the highs, but it's trying. It still isn't free of this just yet, but I will certainly keep it on my watch list for buying opportunities for the rest of this coming week. Same thing again, similar with Brent. Very nice continuation, so that looks really nice and healthy on the weekly. So far in the next level that I have up here, actually I haven't put in those levels. I thought I had. Okay, well that's fine. So we'll continue on up towards 80. Let's just see how we deal with 80 and then if we can push on through that. So far this does look as though it is keen to continue to push on and try. Okay, moving away from crudes and then having a look at the global indices, starting off with the Dow and the US. We did drop a little bit lower. We've pierced these lows at 33,000. We broke these lows again, so that is noteworthy. Okay, we did break to a new low. The market did test below that. Buyers did come back in and pushed, and then we closed down lower than the previous week. So what does that mean? It means that the buyers that were able to prop up the previous week and finish to the upside were not as strong this time. This market is starting to wane a little bit. Okay, there's going to have to be a renewed push and to really show some strength there. But right now, and this monthly candle so far looking great. I mean, we're really only a couple of days into it, and so therefore this is too soon. But it has come back down towards the moving averages. It's a nice little, it's the lightest, most minimal effort in terms of a healthy correction on the monthly. I'd like to see a deeper correction, but I'm just highlighting that this would be potentially be sufficient. That weekly doesn't really I don't have much faith in this. This is looking particularly weak. It does look as though it might stumble a bit further this week, and if that is the case, if it does commit and then it closes, especially below this, then I think there's this possible, we'll have to see how we survive at this level. Otherwise, we're starting to look a little bit further. So again, that becomes higher risk. I'm very cautious on that. If we can just follow through, this was a good recovery on the daily, but it also didn't close completely down near the, it didn't close, did not close like near the highs. It's kind of come back down. I want to see a bit of a follow through and pushing on to get back up to these levels. But this level around here below the 35,000 is a problem. And overall, you can see we've produced a series of lower highs, lower lows on the dailies. So the question now is not that the buyers don't exist in this area. Are there enough of them to keep it back up? And can we get more buyers coming in here to keep it going to the other side? The buyers are here, but they are starting to weaken. They did take another hit this week. Looking at the S&P, same thing again. We can see that weekly candle is actually an outside candle. So this was, typical that we actually did break the high of last week's candle, but then came and dropped all the way down and then pushed back up. So this is now an outside candle. It's not looking super bearish. Okay, again, the buyers managed to close it up about halfway. So if we kind of immediately this week break and start heading down towards the lows, back down to this 4,223 level, we're starting to really let off that steam. Excuse me, and so that's a possibility. Again, it's just more and more caution. So this is what I'm looking for, to see how price handles this area here, the midpoint, let's call it the midpoint, or daily support resistance areas if they start to struggle, producing bearish candles looking like they want to head it a little bit lower. Take that into account. The Nasdaq, again, this has come back into these old lows here. I think it's fair to add in a bit of a level in this area. So let's just put in a bit of a daily level around about here. That's actually quite interesting. It's kind of found support in the past year and struggling a little bit at the moment. There's another bit of a level here. I'll put that in as well, and sort of see how we react to that. Okay, so we'll just see if we can survive this, but this does not look good. A push up into these lows, and then if we start to get bearish rejections and head back down, we're going to then start looking at a bigger push to the downside. What is noteworthy here for sure is that this is an outside bearish candle. It's actually closed below the low of the previous week. All right, so closed below the low, committed and closed to that. There is this hinting at certainly worthwhile considering, or that it's considering a move even lower. If it's going to do that, we'll see a move down towards 14,000 if that's going to be the case. And again, on a monthly time frame, that looks really nice and healthy, back into those old market structures. And then it can finish up higher and it can recover, and then we can resume and head our way back through to January. So I'd like to see the recovery. I want to see it get back through this band, but it is looking increasingly weak. And the Nasdaq weekly chart, the fact that it closed below the previous week's low is in itself quite significant. Okay, mini Russell 2000. This, well done, has managed to stay above where it is. It's kind of still in this area, and I said I was just kind of watching these areas to see if it closes below these lows, but buyers in this area still pushing it up above that. And this monthly just looking very interesting. That's so this. To me, this is interesting because usually when a market is going to have a correction, it has a correction. If it's continuing like this, it may well be because it actually is getting ready to break out to the upside. So I think it's worthwhile putting a bit of a marker there to see if we do ultimately get a breakout to the upside there. It's had a good rest going almost all the way back to February, and therefore might just be accumulating some strength. If this gets ready to continue to the upside, so will the rest of the markets. All right, FTSE. So the FTSE here, similar type of behavior here. It's kind of drops down, push back up, a bit of a small bearish candle. It's a complete mess, obviously on the daily. It's what we call a hot mess. And this weekly just going largely sideways within this range. So not really tradable, not really giving a lot of clarity, certainly not looking super strong. Let's look at the DAX. So this one quite interesting. Again, this is almost a bearish outside candle. Didn't close, it closed below the close of the previous week, but not below the lows. It is coming down to these levels and testing these levels. Can it continue? That monthly looks good. I like the fact that we've come back into those moving averages, and we're like producing a nice little bullish candle. The buyers can come back in and potentially October, November push higher. But this is now starting to look more and more as though there might be a bigger correction to the downside. So I just want to kind of move this thing around and just get this up there. Okay, and to see if we then continue down this week, break below this, if we start to head back in towards these old highs here, if that's going to be the case. Euro stocks. This one, same thing again, kind of a big bearish candle, but more of a correction considering the previous week buys had come in. This week they failed to do that. And we could definitely come back into these old highs here. So there's nothing I would think unhealthy on towards if the Euro stocks decided to head back down. Let off a little bit of that seam. I'd have to see it push right back up above these old highs to start to consider being more bullish. So in other words, I don't really want to look for long opportunities to get back up towards these highs. And if we start to break below the lows, I'm starting to look, starting to be a bit more bearish on those ones. Nikkei. Okay, so this one I was talking about how I came back into these old highs, and that is absolutely, I think, fair to now call that a nice little significant level there. And then look and see how we reacted. That is a solid bearish engulfing candle. Usually, especially if you break the low of that, closing near the lows, this would usually, or in most cases, would tell the story it intends to hit lower. So that's quite interesting to me as well. ASX 200 as well. That's really nice. Come back into these old highs. I'm pretty happy with that. Even though it did close up towards the highs, it's already started to hit lower here. You can see it's actually closed below all these lows here. All right, so that in itself, again, if we continue down this week to break these lows, then we're going to start to see perhaps a much bigger correction. There is a possibility we're going to have a much bigger correction, and it is significant that we close below those lows as well. This is just a solid bearish candle. Looking at the daily here, you can see how it dropped down, attempted to go back up, and knocked all the way back down. So now there's more sellers. You can see there's a tipping point where it's shifting from having almost those sort of a mixture of buyers and sellers to kind of the buyers are starting to get a little bit kicked up and messed around. Okay, so let's move on to the equities of interest. This one I spoke about Royal Mail. I was looking to see if it would manage to get out of its consolidation. Actually has fallen, gapped right down below those levels, let off some really decent steam on the monthly. So I'm very happy to see that. So we've had a big move down to these levels, and therefore heading down to 400 is a possibility. If the rest of the markets, if these indices do decide to head lower, then this will head even further down, and then we'll start to see it potentially coming in towards these levels of support down here. But right now it's coming into the old high here. And so this will be the first attempt where I think buyers will attempt to see if they can hold it above that. Looking good. So from an investing perspective, it's nice because we're starting to see some of these ones I like are starting to shed some weight and they become attractive in terms of buying and holding. But for trading purposes, they're getting a little bit tricky. So look at American Express, Amex coming back into these old highs. If the rest of the market's going to do that, it makes sense. It's going to start to struggle. It's going to perhaps fail, then come back down and test these lows. So that will be interesting. That monthly behavior now is starting to show some failure and exhaustion at this area. ARC Innovation, there we go. So we broke below these lows. Okay, we're starting to look more and more bearish, coming down to 106, potentially to test that 100 level. Okay, so that is certainly at this point in time, if we could just kind of tread this area, maybe even come down towards 100, I'm relatively happy with that for now. But this is not looking that strong unless it can recover, get back up above that 130 level. So you can see them starting to sweat a little bit here. Now this one as well, I can see although with Berkshire Hathaway, buyers have stepped in this last week, didn't really show them managing to sort of keep it that way. We could see that we pulled back, buyers came back in on a Friday. We've got price kind of consolidating sideways to connect to the moving averages. I don't think it's really there at this point in time. If we do break below these lows, then I think there's going to be a significant drop down towards 250, potentially even down towards 225. I've said this before. This is really if we break below this little consolidation level. As long as we hold along this consolidation level, then we're going to start to look more and more like a breakout to the upside. But right now, it's leaning towards a break lower. So BP as well. This one actually recovering really well. Part of this is to do thanks to the UCAN, that typical, madness that we have where people have been hanging out at petrol stations. Don't panic, don't panic. So what do people do? They panic. And so, of course, we've got a fuel shortage. And so these companies have benefited from it. So they've actually had a really nice boost on it from these little inside kind of bullish candles. They've boosted right up at these old highs. The question is, can they continue to do that as the rest of the market starts to sink a little bit? Let's just have a look at Exxon. I'll just move straight on to that. Similar thing. Exxon producing that nice little bullish follow through, really solid gap up and a close right at the highs. Most of that implying that the buying, there's quite a bit of buying pressure to the upside there. It's going to continue to attempt to push higher. Going back up to Coca-Cola, this has now let off quite a bit of steam, broken these old lows here on the weekly, and come back into the moving averages in towards these old highs here. So again, similar to what I saw with Berkshire Hathaway on ARK Innovation, this is this area where now it's going to attempt to recover at this point. So buyers will be coming in at this point. Let's see if they can hold it there this coming week. If they fail to do that, then I think prices can head down towards that $50 mark. Okay, we've seen that one. Let's have a look at General Motors. General Motors pulled down, nice little bullish inside candle. So actually General Motors doing really well with holding that. However, we're now back up at these previous lows. So if we finish up with a rejection candle, if we can't get back over the 53 mark, then we're going to start to look more and more bearish. But this is holding strong. Nice little high lows coming in. All of this price action is collectively really bullish. So what I'd like to see is a break up and a close above that this coming week to see if we can get back into these old highs. So I don't think it's ready to get past those just yet, but I'd like to see if we can get back over that and head up. On the other hand, can we not, if we fail to get over this, we're going to see ourselves back down at these lows over here, and I can mark that. So I'm just going to do that there. That'll see us back down at these old lows this week. So far, all of this looking more and more bullish. Can it manage to do that? It's actually looking, compared to a few of the others, looking more bullish. JP Morgan Chase, same thing here. We've got high lows, highs. That's nice and bullish. Nice little bit of a gap up there. Did we close above those highs? Yes, we closed above the highs. So all of that looking more bullish than bearish. Really nice monthly trend here. This one actually looking as though it might be able, it's got its sight set on 180. So that will be interesting. If it can continue to do that, it's pulled back into these old highs here, produced a bullish candle, break above that. Be nice to see that continue up towards 180. So that's good. So similar to General Motors, not everything is necessarily looking dire. I mean, if the whole market does tank, then that's going to affect these as well. But they are, despite how the last couple of weeks have been, they're looking quite nice and bullish. Then if we look at, say, Morgan Stanley, that's a bearish outside candle. We didn't close below the lows, but it's also not super strong. And looking at the monthly here, we actually finished with an inside bearish candle. That's quite interesting. This is almost like a U-turn, effectively. If they had closed at the same level or opened at the same level, that's almost a U-turn, which is a solid rejection of that 100 level. Absolutely a nice, solid rejection of that 100 level. We could just put that in. And therefore, but it's interesting, we haven't immediately broken the low of that just yet. If we do this week, if we break the low of that, then I'm going to expect price to start to head down towards that 87 to 90 mark. But actually it's holding for the moment. I'd like to see it initially perhaps come down and test these old highs here around that 93.40 mark, but it's actually it's trying really hard to do that. So this week it may very well manage to stay above the 100 level, but otherwise I'm expecting a little bit of a move lower. Apple has actually come down this really nice on the monthly. I still think it's got to go a little bit further down. It seems to be doing the minimum effort correction here. That's not a really strong setup. We had a bullish candle the week before, then we're sort of in that zone as well, that zone of equilibrium, but we haven't closed bullishly. There are some buys here, but I don't know if they're strong enough to prevent the market going a little bit lower down in towards 133. We'll see if that's the case. That's a great setup on the daily. That looks really nice and bullish. So this week, if we immediately on Monday, we just reject this and start heading lower, we'll see how that goes. If we can get back up above this level and break these highs, then I start to become more bullish. But this way, leaning, quite a few of these are showing that the potential to head low. Same thing again here, look at NVIDIA. That's a really bearish kind of finish. I'm looking this week to see if we get a bullish candle by the end of the week. Especially if we can close above those highs, that'll look good. But that monthly, now that we've produced that swing high so far, let's see if we're going to get a second red month in October. PayPal. Okay, so PayPal's coming consolidation. Finished really bearishly. That's a nice close. That's also a bearish engulfing candle and a downtrend on the weekly. So all of this just saying it is certainly going to consider the idea of heading down towards 233. On the other hand, if I could see it recover immediately and break above these highs, but this is now in a downtrend, looking more and more bearish. The question is, what are these levels? Can it hold above? And we'll see. Again, it's got some potential resistance up here. So if the market does attempt to come up, will it be able to stay up there or bump its head and then finish lower by the end of the week? Tesla, yeah, this is quite interesting. So definitely struggling a little bit around that 800 mark this time around. Bit of indecision candle here, and therefore this is not a bad area for this to take a bit of a breather, come back down. In isolation, this looks really good. Now it's entering this area around that 800 mark where there just might not be any more buyers at that point in time. So that is going to be interesting to me, especially if we produce a move to the downside this week back into these lows around about that 696, 700 mark. But the daily looking nice and bullish. The weekly looking nice and bullish, except for this last candle here. This is not really a sign of strength. If we don't break the low, we can break the high. There might be a continuation, but it's going to run 800 is going to be the challenge there. Ain't no doubt about that. So we'll have to see how that goes. Spider. Okay, this one now producing lower highs, lower lows on the weekly, coming back down, testing this level. And so it's probably got its eyes set on that 118 mark. We'll have to see how that goes. If it's going to test those levels, and if it does break through that, then there's obviously going to be a bigger correction down towards these levels here. Hopefully it can stay above that. There's a bit of my concern there. Vanguard. All right, so Vanguard, beautiful, nice little healthy correction back down. I don't think that I would say that it's corrected enough, especially look at that weekly candle. This looks as though it's still potentially keen on coming down a little bit lower, perhaps down towards that 390 year, and then perhaps bouncing and finishing up nice and bullish. That's a nice little bullish thing as well, but that almost looks like a last kind of ditch attempt to scramble back into the boat now that the whole ship is sinking. And let's see if it can get back up above those highs. Okay, it is starting to look more and more bearish. Okay, moving on. I do apologize for the length of this video, but I'm giving a lot more kind of detail into analysis of everything. And if that's okay with you, give me feedback. I usually do try to keep these videos around the 26 mark. Okay, because that's about as fast as I can go through everything. So let's look at Treasuries. The Treasuries here, this one broken through that level here, a bit of a boost to the upside, finishing with a bit of a bullish candle from the last week. So the reason I'm looking at this is we would then potentially, if this becomes a swing low on the monthly, we would then have a higher low on this, and Treasuries would start to climb. That I'm just always keeping an ear to the ground for safe haven type of behavior where you see the flow of money heading into traditional type safe haven instruments. So I'm having a look to see if that's going to be the case. So this week, do we just kind of continue down disregarding it, which means that, there's no fear at this point in time, or alternatively we can push up towards these 134 highs, and that'll be something I'll look during the week to see if we can get back up above it. Okay, this was a really nice breakout move to the downside, which I missed entirely. I'm just looking at it now. Euro bubble as well, nice little downtrend happening there. Not really a super strong recovery on that one. So if we do follow through, then I would say that there's a bit of a move towards that. Here we're still within this range, not offering a lot of clarity on that one. Euro Bund. Same thing again, this is looking pretty neutral, not looking as though there's much panic buying there. Okay, let's look at crypto. So, Bitcoin actually did really well. It's on a nice solid uptrend. It's going to have to deal with 48,300. It's going to have to deal with this and aim back up towards 50,000. That's a really nice bullish recovery and a close above the high. So this certainly looks more bullish than bearish. This looks nice and bullish. So far, most of this, if it could just break through this level, I think it's going to work its way up to 50,000. I'd love to see it close above that this coming week. Looking more bullish than bearish. Ethereum's going to be the same thing. That's a beautiful, nice little bullish candle closing right near the highs. We can break the high. That's certainly more bullish than bearish. And the monthly candle so far looking really good right at the top. That daily looking pretty good. So for intraday trading, any pullbacks into these levels and looking for some kind of test of those levels and a continuation looking good. More bullish than bearish. Okay, so let's have a look at NEO. So I was saying one of the things that I'd be interested to see is if we ultimately have a bit of a big correction, do we see safe haven buying of cryptos? Because that would be an indication that they've kind of truly arrived. So NEO, this isn't as bearish as it was before. It's come back up to these old highs. It's most likely going to break that or potentially range in that area. I'd like to see it fully break up above that and continue to the upside. And then it's starting to look more and more bullish. So Cardano, higher low here. Can we break the high? Beautiful, beautiful weekly candle, inside candle, potential buying signal on that weekly. Look at this monthly. Look how it's broken up, come back down and produced a bullish candle off these old highs. So there are signs that if it ultimately carries on, this is that turning point. Same thing again here. Pullback. A bit of a pullback and a nice little bullish candle so far. That weekly bullish candle looking pretty good as well. So all of these looking as setups to go back into these old highs over here. Finishing off on Dogecoin. Back down into a level of support. Nice little bullish candle so far. This daily is now kind of tired of going down. It's potentially in a range. If it fails to go higher and then goes back down, over this coming week. Of course, that's a possibility, but it looks like it wants to attempt to break past these highs and go up to the next set of highs across the board. So that's kind of interesting to me. So just to quickly recap, currency is looking quite messy to me. There may be trends that occur that suddenly come out of nowhere. The gold, I want to see if that can manage to push higher, but again, most of these are very messy. Crude oil is looking good. I want to see if they can sustain that stuff. The indices actually looking relatively weak. If they can turn it around and push back over the lines, then there may well be for the subsequent week looking relatively nice and bullish. That applies to a lot of the equities of interest that they are kind of most of them have newer low levels that they might well be eyeing out, and then the Treasuries, Eurobonds looking relatively boring. There's not a lot going on there. Crypto's actually, to me, looking quite interesting in terms of buying opportunities to the upside. There we go, ladies and gents. I apologize. This is longer than usual. I usually try and keep it back down, but hopefully this is okay nevertheless. I want to wish you a fantastic week. Please remember to manage your risk appropriately, and have a great week. Hopefully some really good setups, trends do kick off, and we do start to see some really nice stuff happening between now and Christmas. Thank you very much.